So what is QA? Quality assurance in games. You probably heard these words from others talking in the industry, maybe technical jargon, maybe you know exactly what it is. But in this video, I wanted to actually tackle a little bit about the role of a QA department in a game. When does it actually start? What exactly do you do? And exactly what kind of things do you learn along the journey? Because that's how I started in this games industry. I've learned a lot from QA. I'm incredibly thankful for my time as QA. And I think it's time for me to highlight some of the pros and cons of being a quality assurance tester here in the games industry. So let's do it. All right, welcome to another video. I hope you guys are doing well. And as usual, I'm Harvey Newman. I share my passion here for games, the animation industry, and much, much more. And if this is your first time here, consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and also drop a comment down below. Now, before I go ahead, just like last week, I would like to actually kind of highlight this animation course that I'm about to release in August, and it's going to be absolutely amazing, or so I hope. I'm working incredibly hard behind the scenes, recording a bunch of videos, doing a bunch of things. I'm pointing over there because my computer is over there. I'm doing a lot of videos about motion capture, how to capture it, how to direct it. This is a course directed to the junior animator that actually just wants to get in the industry, but also the experienced animator that has been in the industry for a while and wants to know more tips and tricks on how to clean up mocap in a really, really cool way. It's going to come with an exclusive rig called Nubian that is going to look absolutely badass. It's going to have a couple of vehicles. You're going to be able to import it into Unreal. There is so much to this course that I'm trying to create for you guys. So if you actually want to actually join in and want to actually be notified when this course is about to come out, make sure to actually kind of click the link down below in the description, because it will take you to a little box that I have on the website that if you sign up, then it means that I'll send you an email as soon as the course is up, most likely before it goes to the public, so you guys can join in and start getting the fun of the course earlier than others. So, having said all that, let's get into the subject of this video, which is all about QA. So what is QA? So QA stands for quality assurance, and quality assurance tester, to be precise, because quality assurance is very much like a quality assurance of, I don't know, a building or any fire department or whatever it is that actually they need to have people testing things to make sure that things work properly. And that's basically your role as a QA. So this role is really important for the industry in games, and is absolutely necessary for any game that you actually played so far in your life. Most likely, actually no, all of the games had a QA department before the game goes live. However, there is a stigma attached to it that I'll talk about it in a bit, which is very negative. It's very much about QA they don't matter in certain studios, not all studios, but they don't matter as much as other departments in the games industry. But I'll get to the negatives later on in the video. When you actually start as a QA, normally you don't have to have experience in the industry. You just need to showcase your passion for games. A lot of companies would say that they would like to have their QA with experience and publish at least 1 or 2 or 3 AAA titles. But really what companies are looking for is people that are passionate about games, and also they are not afraid of repetition. Because as a QA, when you get hired, let's say you had an interview and now you're actually hired and now you are ready to actually play this game, the first month, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months is going to be a lot of fun, because you actually not only get to say, I work in the games industry now as a QA, but also you're having fun playing the game, especially if you kind of come in towards the end of the game. You a lot of fun, you're discovering the game, let's say, I don't know, a Red Dead or a GTA. The game is so vast that you're going to have so many things to do that most likely the first few months are going to be a lot of fun. The problem about QA is that you are not there just to play the game as you would do at home, having fun by yourself, just progressing through the story. What you're really there to do is to find bugs, and you're gonna find a lot of bugs because the game is not polished, and this is why QA is so important, because your role as a QA is to poke holes at the game to make sure that you find the things that the player ultimately will not find, right? If all goes well, this game is going to be so polished that no matter what the player does when they buy their disc, they will never find a bug, right? That's the ideal scenario for any game. Obviously, it's not the case, as we all know, but that's the idea. So as a QA department, your job, first and foremost, is to find as many bugs as possible and just bug as many things as possible and just poke every single department, doesn't matter if it's art, engineering, animation, whatever it is, and just tell them these animations, like, you know, are not playing correctly, the art here is temporary, is not final, or, you know, this system is not working correctly for these reasons. That's basically your role as a QA. And that's basically one of the benefits and downsides of being QA, because as a QA, sometimes you get a lot of, you know, negativity from other departments, because you are basically annoying the other departments by telling them that they are not doing their job correctly because this animation is perhaps not playing correctly, or this thing is not correct, and they have so many things in their minds and too many things to do that they want to move forward. They don't want to like really deal with the stuff that has been done already. That stuff is done, so let's move forward. And what you're telling them is that this stuff that is done, it's not really done. You have mistakes here, here, fix it, right? So that's the first part. So you end up being like the good guys and the bad guys at the same time. But there's a lot of ways for you to get around it. Also depends on the studio, how much they integrate the QA with the studio. And this is something super vital, because the best QA departments, the best run QA departments that I've ever found, always are the part of the game studios that basically embed QA within the game itself, within the studio, within the teams, so they actually one with the team, right? So I work with studios that very much like animation has their own QA department, so they are part of our department. So whenever we actually kind of like, whenever they go, these animations are not working correctly, you guys made these animations, but this and this and this is not working because, you know, it's not playing or whatever, then the QA knows that, oh, it's only like Patrick and like, you know, like Maria that is actually saying that they are QA, they are part of us, so let's go and fix it. The problem with QA sometimes comes with when the QA is completely separated from the development studio. And when I started as a QA, I was actually quality assurance, which is another type of QA that I get into in just a bit. But like my second job was as a QA at a company called Sega. And they had a QA, at least at that time, I don't know if they still have it now, but they had a QA department that is separated from all the studios, and all the studios around Sega basically pump the games into this QA, and then you test those games, and then you report bugs back. Now, these bugs now go back to the teams, and basically you become a service department for all the other games. And this is where the problem kind of starts, because you become like just a person that is sitting down playing games and finding things for other people that are actually making the game. So you never felt, or I never felt like I was properly part of the game, that I was properly having an effect on the outcome of the game, which if you work as a QA for years, it starts to have an impact on you when you start to feel like you don't really change the game, right? You're just there to kind of like just report on the mistakes that people did, but you're not really creating anything. On the best studios that I had, when QA is really good, they suggest a lot of things. They normally really hardcore gamers, so they kind of go like, look, this game did this and this game did that. I know that we're trying to do this, but maybe like look at this game or that reference. And it's great because it kind of snaps you out of this mindset that you have as a developer, that once you actually kind of like fix onto something, you have to work on it and hammer it until it comes out. And QA is really good at making sure that they come with fresh ideas, which is really, really cool. Now, that's basically the pros and cons of QA and how some of the studios around the world kind of have their QA set up. I do think things have changed over the years. In the beginning, it used to be very much like the Sega example that I just mentioned. I think that the more the industry grew over the last 20 years that I've been around, the more they understand the importance of QA and the more they start embedding their QA within the teams or within the studio themselves, which then it means that QA is full-time employees that are not contracting, they are just there for the project, which is great. Now, the types of QAs that exist. There is actually like a ranking within QA, and there's also like the different types of QA that exist. Now, the different types of QA that exist is very much like the full-timer working within the studio, and then there's companies that actually sell their QA services to other companies. There's also different types of QA where you actually kind of like work within a game, within a studio, or work as a certification QA, which means that you work for Microsoft or Sony, like testing the games that end up going to the public. In this case, you're not really connected with any company that is actually making the games. You are there to basically find bugs that don't really match within a Bible that both Sony and Microsoft have that they need to pass in order to get the games in their console. So that's basically a certification QA. So those are some of the types of QAs that you have, like, contractors, you have somebody working on certification, and you have somebody working on embedded in the studio. You guys can probably tell by now that most likely the best is to actually be embedded in the studio, being full-time. But even when you are embedded in the studio and you are working for them, studios, depending on the budget, depending on how they are, some studios actually don't like their QA to be like really big all the time of development. Some studios actually want the QA to be just big by the last 6 months or a year of a game where they can go hard. So what this means is that normally there's a QA lead or somebody that actually is like the head of QA that is there permanently, full-time, hired. That person is there all the time from the beginning to the end of the game. And then maybe there's another couple people depending on the side of the studio. But towards the end of the game, certain companies expand their QA department and then start using either third-party QA or hire people temporarily so they can have like, I don't know, a QA of about 50 people, 20 people that can actually be hammering at the game all the time, because only when the game is kind of final, like last year of the game or so, can you truly cohesively know what the game is about, but also like what kind of like holes exist in the game, right? So those two things also happen, right? And this is why sometimes it's incredibly ungrateful for QA, because even though you love the job, even though you love games and you love to work as a QA, you find yourself kind of like, just ups and downs all the time, right? Sometimes you have lots of work, sometimes you don't have a lot of work, and it doesn't feel sustainable. At least it didn't feel sustainable to me after a while, because I kept losing jobs all the time, and then I had to chase other jobs all the time, and it was always, the turnover was massive, right? So that's basically what QA has to go through, and this is why I relate to a lot of them, and is incredibly important to a lot of them. And some of the best friends that I made in this industry are from QA. Shout out to all of them if they are watching this, from Sega, from Microsoft, Xbox Live, and stuff like that. Because you kind of unite not only in the love for games, but also you unite on the ups and downs of being a QA, right? There's lots of stories, war stories of the good stuff, the bad stuff. So that's basically QA in a nutshell. They are incredibly important for any one game. Every single game needs them. However, a lot of studios out there still don't understand the importance of QA. And I do think that a lot of studios are starting to actually kind of like get QA to be much more than QA, because they actually end up being the voice of like the community sometimes. For example, in certain studios that it was not only QA, but they also were, embedded in the social media team, where they were talking with Reddit players, they were talking with Twitter players, they were talking with all that stuff, and then feeding back the information back to the team that then ultimately made a better game. So it very much just like the QA is testing the game, but also the community online is testing the game. So QA then amalgamates all that knowledge to then give to the team. So I think QA is getting to a better and better place. Now, I think that we still have a long ways to go, but QA is incredibly important for any game out there, for sure. So that's the job of a QA. However, there's a big part here that is missing, that I think that most people in QA are actually thinking about right now, if you're watching this, which is transitioning from QA to other things within the games industry. And the lore of QA, at least for me, it was always the ideas, the stories, what I was talking about, the war stories before. It was always the stories that people used to say about, I had a friend that started as a QA, and after 5 years working in this company, he then became a game designer, and now he's designed this game and that game and stuff like that. And those stories were incredibly inspiring to me, because I was like, oh, maybe through QA I can actually get to a certain point. And this is true. This happens all the time, and the best studios out there that treat their QA fairly, they normally always give QA a path to then expand, to kind of like go into the actual development of the game in terms of like being a designer or being an artist or being whatever, right? And that is the best way that I think you can actually kind of like be a QA. If you are in one of those studios, then consider yourself grateful and also work incredibly hard. The thing about the transition, and that's the hardest bit, even the studios that treat QA incredibly well and actually give them a path to actually get there, sometimes they milk that information or they milk that transition a little bit too much, and they get people to work incredibly hard for that transition. So they almost have to prove themselves that they can be better than any junior or any intern that would come from the street to the studio. Just like, show me that you're better than them so I can give you that position as QA to actually kind of like do better. But I do think that if you are a QA and you've been working in the studio and you showcase how hard you work and you showcase how willing you are to kind of like transition into this other position, I think it should be a no-brainer, because like the hard work factor of a position in the games industry sometimes is actually overlooked a lot of the times. Some people kind of focus too much on the talent and then they forget about the hard work part, and sometimes those things don't match, right? One thing that is for sure, everybody that is on QA right now, I know that you guys work incredibly hard, because I did, entering those bugs, doing all the JIRAs, information captures and stuff like that. So you're kind of like ready for the transition. Plus, the longer you are in QA, and I was in QA for about 6.5 years, the longer you are in QA, the more you can analyze and study games. So you spend all of your days daydreaming about a specific like day that you're gonna get into the industry, you're gonna make all these changes and you're gonna do all these things, that by the time you do it, you are kind of like ready to be more than just one specific thing. So I do think that, for example, anybody that comes from a university animation background, for example, or design background, when they get into the games industry, they can do one thing only, right? But QA, you have been in touch with all the departments around every single part of the studio, which means that you know a little bit about each department, which means that you have a better visibility of what the game can be and what the studio can do more than others. And that helps you tremendously to kind of like really figure out exactly what each department does and how can it be beneficial for the game. And most people that I know that are really, really talented in this industry, that have gone to make amazing games, they normally started from QA. And I do think that the thing about the visibility of all the departments and working with different people and making sure that you're actually outspoken and talk about the bugs and this shouldn't be this way and fighting your corner is part of the mix that makes certain people like super successful in this industry. So that's it. That's QA. It's simple, but not so much. To all of my QA people out there, shout out to you guys for all the hard work. And if you're interested in being a QA, drop a comment down below if you have any more questions, or if you are already a QA, feel free to share your your ideas, and like if I missed anything, absolutely mention it down below, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and I hope to see you guys in the next video next week. Until then, stay well, stay safe. Peace.